We will not use our entire time here. So there was going to be time at the very end of this. We have our exercise, our first exercise. My intention is to make this very simple, very easy, and for us to start thinking about so we're going to introduce some key metrics that we think about a lot at RevOps. And this is still very high level, and this will start to give us the language. And this is the first model. Okay, so let's talk about what this is. So as a reminder, we finished class 1 earlier this morning. We went over the definition of revenue operations, provided a more, I'll go over a summary in this in a second. But then class 2, this is, keep it very, this is going to be nice and digestible. Tomorrow it's going to be a lot more full. This is, class 2 is B2B business model. We'll talk about what that looks like, and it may change your mind about stuff, and you may be lots of questions on this. And then the effect of the business model on key RevOps metrics and how it affects how we think about our business. That's the 2 objectives. From these 2 objectives, here are the 3 questions we're going to go inside. What is the business model? What's the effect of the business model? And what are key trends inside the business model we see today that as revenue operations professional, we must be thinking about? Okay, go next. Okay, as we're doing this, I'm going to attempt to be monitoring our Q&A. So I will look over those. And I will also be monitoring Slack. So you can ask in either place, and I will do my best. Jan, please interrupt me if there's a question that needs an answer in as we go. So let me make sure I have this up. Here we go. I'm in the channel. Okay. So summary from class 1 is this. We did this. I'm gonna go real quick. Is RevOps is not new, and it likely doesn't have pillars. People have been doing it for a long time. It's just how important it is. And the definition, as we've provided lots, we don't define things by their end states. We define it is revenue operations is the science of sustainable revenue growth that's repeatable, can be replicated, has a process with a specific order that enables us to measure, repeat, improve, explain, and apply growth strategies in order of priority. And it's become more popular because internet access, loss of buyer journey, there's a bunch more data, business is more complicated, and SaaS people need revenue operations people to sell to. Okay, that's the summary. Yeah, we'll have this recording if you want to go back through it. So what is the business model? How is this different than a go-to-market model? How is this different than a data model? Let's walk through this. Now, when I first was thinking about this and going through, I did not think the business model was that important. And as I was going through and building the data model, I realized, wow, this is actually the foundation, and we must have a fundamental idea of our business model and how it affects key differentiators in our key RevOps metrics. As we said on this, you need to know what business model is your company. Quick tip, that is the exercise. Like you're going to have to say, as part of your homework, is you're going to have to say your company, what is its business model? So pay attention as we go through this. We do. So first, the premise, why it's important and like understanding it is the business model exists on a continuum for B2B. And there are 3 types of business models, and you're going to be in between this. On the left, all the way, and you'll see this drawn, is perpetual ownership or ownership model. It then goes to subscription and then consumption, and how we're selling our goods and how people are receiving our goods and paying for our goods. That affects our several different RevOps metrics, and it allows us to understand this idea of a continuum, how we're being paid. We begin to understand key metrics like sales cycle, average contract value, win rates, risk profiles for like profitability of the business and who's assuming most of the risk, and go-to-market motions. And this will be the most important thing as we go in tomorrow. Like this is what you have to have this, or tomorrow will not be as effective and won't be understood as well. So core premise, before we get into the model, the core premise number 1 is, and you heard me talk about this briefly or hint at it in class number 1. That is, this is vertical agnostic. Well, it is not It is a B2B. So it only applies to B2B. And this is different. So like there's a different business model, like framework that this is applying to if you have a B2C, but this does apply for channel sales. It does provide for resellers. It provides for affiliate marketing. What it doesn't apply to is like B2C companies, although it can be used and made to use for it. Just know like corporate, vertical agnostic. Many times I'm working with HubSpot and they're like, hey, Matt, or somebody asked me, hey, Matt, do you have experience in this random vertical? Let's do healthcare vertical with this. And it is important to have vertical knowledge because you understand the players and you understand like the most ways to make things efficient. But vertical matters a whole heck of a lot less than your actual business model of B2B. And do you have experience in the business model of either ownership, subscription, or consumption? So that's what just as a point. Number 3 is journey. This is exists on a continuum from a level of journey from of recurring revenue. So you're going to see this. It's from I can own this product for the lifetime, right? I'm going to own the product for 5 years, and then I have to then do another extremely large purchase, or all the way to consumption, like an AWS server, where I only pay for what I use. Now you'll see, like based on how we're doing that, just know we're on the journey, and everyone's on this journey. It just depends on where you're at. So here, now we're going to go over, we're going to understand this model, and we're going to look at it and talk about the history and how it evolved. I'm going to take a side step is remember, ask questions. There is a question. I'm going to answer it now. Question is, if I am to migrating a sales database from on-premise to cloud, am I doing DevOps or RevOps? I emphasize that this move is to favor sales analysis efficiency and thus revenue. On-premise to cloud. The answer is we at RevPartners do this all the time, right? We'll have 5 different databases and we will manage the product database and the marketing database and the sales database of companies. And moving it to the cloud, I consider that a very specific function, almost a foundational place of where your CRM data is held and stored. I would consider this and so at this point, revenue operations. You are doing it, you're doing a function of that, and DevOps or data operations actually fits within revenue operations. So that's how I'd answer that. Okay. Question, how effective is this model? I think it's extremely effective. How complex is this model? Not very complex. You're about to see it. What's a practical example of consumption? We will go through that, and I'll answer that here in a second as we go through. Okay, let's go. So if you look on the left, this is pay up front, meaning you pay a large sum of money and you own it, all the way to the right, which is a no cure, no pay, meaning you could it's like a freemium model. Sometimes you don't even pay for it unless you go up. And it's this like freemium to paid function that Slack does is a good example. So this is a good example of a freemium is Slack. You have a free version and then you go up to paid. Consumption, Amazon AWS or Google Cloud or Azure. All of them are consumption based. And you'll see this in a second. Okay, so we start. The first ownership model that's on the left is call it on-premise hardware or just on-premise anything that it can be a manufacturing company that's selling a large piece of hardware to a manufacturing plant. It could be selling to healthcare where you are selling something you really like MRI or some kind of scanning technology that you only buy once every five years or 4 years. They tend to be extremely large purchases. Now, this was very common and this existed. And we just to the point, we had no way of having another type of model, right? There was no payments, think bank, think ACH, think how someone was paid and our ERPs, meaning our enterprise resource management. So like our QuickBooks or NetSuite, like they just didn't have the functionality to collect things differently. So we didn't have internet, right? So as a point, so in the 1990s, we start moving further and further where we had perpetual software where you'd buy a software license and you would have access to some kind of software for a certain amount of time. Think Microsoft Office, right? You would buy it every year, you get 1 year license, you need to go through. So then you get to the SaaS and you'll see this actually in 2000s as the internet came to be. And you notice that as internet came to be, you had this ability to pay annual contracts, quarterly contracts, monthly contracts, and there's a new way to go to market. And this new way to go to market was selling subscriptions, where people could pay for annual subscriptions, quarterly subscriptions, or even on a monthly contract from time to time. And this became extremely popular. And now in the 2010s, we started to move to a consumption. This is the base of AWS. And this was not possible until new ERP systems and the ability to actually track. So think you can actually pay based on how much you use something weekly or daily or hourly or all the way to by the minute. What's happened more recently in the 2020s is we're actually moving where you have both a consumption subscription, and we're actually moving back, trying to get multi-year contracts where you want as many like you want to do a 3-year contract. And this looks a whole lot like the ownership model. If you buy something for 4 years, you're essentially buying it for a long period of time. These large contracts happens in government and hospitals and healthcare and state entities, right? So if you're looking at this, our business in some way exists on this continuum, right? Like it exists on ownership, subscription, or consumption. And how we are billing and going to market, it does affect key components of RevOps. And it is important to understand and understand. It also affects who we're selling to, how we're selling to them, which we'll get into next time with go-to-market. It affects like what go-to-market we should be doing based on what product we're selling. Yes. May ask, is product-led growth a form of consumption model? Product-led growth is a go-to-market motion for sales that is used by a consumption business model. So you're hearing me be specific on this because PLG is not a business model. PLG is a sales go-to-market strategy, which we'll talk a lot about tomorrow. And it's only one aspect of it. So really good question. And it's a good point. Okay, so let's go. This is the evolution of the business model, and we are somewhere in this. PLG, which we hear is super popular, it's also super technical and super difficult to do. Talk about having to be good at revenue operations, go join a PLG company. But there's also other aspects to it, and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so let's talk about the effects of the business model on metrics and on profitability of a company for business. So number one, let's talk about the effect of your business model on sales cycle and your average contract value. So how large deals are. Before I go, I hear Denny is putting something in, talking about, I love that analogy, very similar to the structure I've been building for our subscription model. Our app is said to be an MRI for finance processes. Instead of telling to our techs, to patients, we focus on consulting firms, hospitals. We employ our tech to benefit the serve. Yeah. So like that's a good point. And so we'll talk about like we'll talk about what is your go. So this is your business model. We'll talk about your go-to-market functions tomorrow. Okay, sales cycle. So when you're looking at this paid up front, these are really long sales cycles, right? 9 to 18 months. And one of the key differences in these sales cycles is these are like large accounts. You may be like an Amazon's purchasing something or a Cisco's purchasing something. So large companies that are already have budget approval prior to doing it. So they have budget approval and they're like, and you're like knowing about projects. And so 9 to 18 months. So think of the significance of this. If this is your business model, this means how your sales team is structured is differently. This means how you're doing sales ramp time. So for instance, if like you don't know if you have a 12-month sales cycle, how are you ramping and paying your sales team if it takes 12 months to close the deal? Just like they're pretty large impacts in this. Next is
Matt, sorry to interrupt. Someone asks if you can define ACV again.
It is average contract value. In every terminology, I believe there's a terminology sheet that I created prior to this that I think Kimberly has shared as well.
I'll put it in the chat as well in just a moment.
Good. I'll answer these, but average contract value. Sometimes people will talk in terms of total contract, like ECV, which is like one individual, but average contract value. So like average contract is over, if it's a 3-year or 4-year deal, how much money total is this entire deal worth? So next as we go to subscription, I mean, subscription changes the game here. Is you might have a 14-day sales cycle to a 6-month sales cycle, depending on how large it is, depending on if you're doing multi-years, annual or quarterly or monthly, and how people are buying, how large those contracts are totally different. And as we go to our next one, which is consumption, I mean, this is hours to seconds. So you think about your sales team here. Do you even need a sales team? So you get PLG, that's part of it. What is PLG means product-led growth, meaning your product is your sales team, and you're not hiring a salesperson. So I just want impact of this is your business model dictates how you're setting and structuring your sales team, your CS team, and your marketing team. And it dictates what go-to-market motion you're going to actually choose, which we're going to talk about in the back end, that allows us to start creating measurables. Okay, so that's your sales cycle, your ACV. Let's talk about win rates. So win rates change based on your business model. Let's explain them. Number one, business model of, let's say we're having a ownership model. These traditionally, it's where this is one of these best practices come up, is you have a 1-to-3 win ratio. And this is, you are, due to the large scale of these deals, 500, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million deals, most buyers are going to already have their budget done. These are going to be many times RFPs. They already have their budget prior. This is where BANT came from. You talk about your qualification metrics, which is BANT is budget, authority, need, timing. This is where it came from in these large deals. BANT does not apply to consumption-based or subscription models, not in the same way. That's where MEDDIC came into it. And there's a new one called SPICED, right? Your qualification metrics and what you're using to qualify changes based on your go-to-market metric, your business model as well. Next is, and we go to subscription, it changes to about a 1-and-5. And that's where you hear that, a really good ratio for industry standard is a 20% win ratio for these subscription models that are occurring in here. And the reason is you have a lower win rate because they're shorter contract, and it's easier to buy. And so people are coming that aren't totally qualified. And so you need a more sophisticated qualification metrics. You need better discovery calls run. And these vendors, yeah. And there's big, and I spelled this wrong, but they're starting to have more vendors per service being rendered. Last is, you'll see it 1-to-8. I mean, there's a super low conversion rate because these can be, some of these are free. And they don't turn into customer. They turn into customers after already using your product. And that is, the win rate just continues to drop at that point. And next is risk. We have another one after this. Okay, so risk is, I think this is important because you think about the risk will start dictating focus, which we're getting to next. Right? It talks about where should you be focusing as a RevOps, where you should be focusing the majority of your time, priority of your time, making more efficient and more effective. So risk is, if you look at the left side, when you have this ownership model, it's almost all the buyer risk. What do I mean? The buyer could get fired if they spend $1 million and your product doesn't work. But that's not the salesperson's fault. This is where the whale of the deal comes in. The salesperson gets high five. That's great. You've got this whale. And after you have made the sale, you're done. You're not talking to the customer again, except for maybe a trip and Christmas cards, but you're done. And the buyer holds almost all the weight. And this is the revolutionary thing that has occurred inside our marketplace as we have moved away from this. But we still have remnants of this, of this idea going by. Is what has changed, and it's a win-win for people, is sellers become at risk as we move to subscription. That means the buyer can walk away. Many times there is their ability to get out of a contract. There is small termination fees, or you have a non-binding contract where it's a month to month and you can end at any time, or a 90-day, 60-day opt-out. And the seller is assuming that risk, and they're not making money until 1 year. That customer has to be that person or that business has to be a customer for 6 months or 12 months before they make any money. The seller's incurring all the risk of the infrastructure and the services. Now, that's amazing for companies because now they can get this considered democratized, right? They can now have access to, you only have to pay a $10 fee for whatever it is now for Netflix. You're going to think like 17, 18. You have to pay that fee, but Netflix is bearing all the millions of dollars of cost it does to deliver, right? and at the beginning is this consumption PLG model. I mean, it's beautiful. We all talk about we want to do it, but talk about risky. Talk about this is the buyers can stop at any time. Many times they can do it for free. While it can accelerate velocity of a deal, like there's just an immense amount of pressure to get more users, get more users, get more users. And as you see this, as you think about this, which business is easier to run? Which business is easier? And I asked this question to the chat, and I'll put, look, I'm looking at Slacker here. I just asked the question, which of these businesses is easier to run? Which business is easier to do RevOps at? I'll give 10 seconds as I ask questions. In the chat.
While we wait for some questions to come in, there was one question that I saw pass that I thought was very interesting. I think it's, yeah, it was a question by Farid. Farid asks, are these win rates for SaaS only, or are they also applied to other products and services?
No, they'll apply to other products and services. So subscription, and don't think about like SaaS meaning software as a service. Any subscription business is going to have that type of win rate for if it's B2B. And so that's a 1 to 5. It'll go from 1, it'll fluctuate. It's going to generally 20%, right? 20 to 30% is really freaking good. For big purchases, 1 to 8, I mean, 1 to 3, generally at 33%, 35% is where you're seeing those big deals lead. And at the very bottom, that's where you're getting the 15% for even 10% for these PLG premium models. Both of those are technically SaaS, right? That's what I mean, is you can be a PLG or a SaaS company, you can be a PLG, you can be a SaaS company, and you can be a subscription. And this is why it's so important to have common language. What's the business model? Is it consumption or is it subscription? Based on that, we can then have a better understanding of win rates versus, oh, I'm a SaaS company, it's PLG. Well, should you be PLG? Like, what's your actual product, right? So sometimes we'll get to that tomorrow, is when should you change different go-to-market motions and how should you do it? Okay, I am looking at this and I'm seeing a lot of this. Subscription plus variable usage is easiest, pay up front is easiest, subscription's the easiest, subscription's the easiest. I will tell you this, which one's the easiest to do revenue operations at and to run? It is always professional on the left side. It is always pay up front. And the reason is there's no upsells, there's no cross sells. You don't have to worry about retention as much, and you are getting money. That's why professional service businesses can become profitable from month 1. It's why you see VC and PE firms putting money and injecting money into consumption based, because there's so much potential, but it costs so much money, and they're not profitable until 10 years down the road. Like, is HubSpot profitable? No, it's not. Like, isn't that crazy? So it's like thinking about, you can run businesses not profitable because of how large their target addressable market is and how much potential they have to grow, versus these large deals are just much more difficult to earn. However, they're more predictable and they're easier to run revenue operations. So the RevOps world has grown up in subscription based and consumption based, and that's why there's a bigger need, because all businesses are transitioning that way. That's why we talk about the change in the business model has had an increased need for the science of revenue operations, because there's more data, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I have some questions here that I'm going to answer. My question is, learning from class 1, if RevOps doesn't consist of pillars, should all RevOps team members have the same set of skills rather than specializing on different pillars? So this is my opinion on this, is pillars are useful for theoretical, like how to structure a team and what functions RevOps is doing. It's not helpful for how to actually effectuate and do revenue and study and create repeatable processes. So once you have a framework, you can go to a pillar and it can help you learn. but you need the framework first. And so this is what I'm trying to get. Another one for our business model for the end customer, we have upfront and subscription items. We would consider our business models the same for dealing with affiliates. Who's actually doing the selling? So this is interesting. So this is where we go to market, and we'll talk about this in our models. Is end users have upfront and subscription. So if you are selling a product, that the core business is where are you making money? What is the core element? What is your go-to-market? And that is your product. And if you look at big enterprise businesses, let's use HubSpot as an example. Where does HubSpot fit in this? And I'll raise hands, Jan, for here. Raise your hand. Where does HubSpot fit within this model? Where did they start and where are they going? And as you think about this. Looks like
And we have a taker.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Fareed, yep.
Yeah.
Where do you think they fit?
For me, basically, it will be on the monthly, on the edge of the monthly, where the seller is at risk, because obviously you can walk away from this monthly subscription. However, and that's like the thing is, I think they are more interested in to get like to a more annual quarterly way that is at least engaged to a contract for 1 year that you cannot walk away. I think that will be the most ideal for them, because again, they don't have to worry about retention that much.
100% right. That was a perfectly answered question. What you said is right. Is HubSpot works within this monthly and annual, and then they are attempting to push things back into multi-year contracts based on how large it is. One point, there is an upfront cost if you do pro or enterprise, but you'll notice, what has HubSpot done? HubSpot has done two things. Number one is they do take upfront payment, but it's very small.
Mhm.
And if you work with a partner, they are not bearing. This is a total another go-to-market for another company altogether. And there's a channel where they're helping sell deals, but they're helping sell these contracts. And then that go-to-market is different for partner companies, just as a point. Okay. I think that's helpful, useful. So I hope that answered your question, Bree. What do you do in case that there have been different products and models? We have very long. So this is it, is if there are different models inside your business, that means you're running totally different go-to-markets. That means your sales, and that's why there's probably confusion from your sales team, who owns it, how your CS team supported. So tomorrow we're going to go over on how to think about enterprise sales versus SMB sales versus PLG sales. And then what if you have all the same together? Should you have different CRMs? Like, you start to ask those questions and you can have answers with this framework. Okay. Last question before I continue on this. I am in a staffing industry, which I feel is very unique in determining business model. Technically, I would say we are consumption-based, as we definitely have a higher win ratio than 1-to-8. And our risk is a little more shared, though I would agree it's higher on the seller side. Thoughts, if you consider staffing consumption-based or hybrid. So I work with some staffing companies, and there are usually two ways. Staffing companies are, in my mind, pay upfront, almost always. It's unique because you get the contract. Once you get the contract, you can work two different ways, right? You work on a retainer, and a lot of staffing companies attempt to get retainers. So they're paid up front, and then they get paid, but they're paid monthly or quarterly over here, right? More consumption. You only pay with what you get. What the staffing, what there also is, hey, you're only paying if you hire. And I forget the word for that, but it's, you only pay, yeah, temporary staffing. That is here. So what you're seeing people do is that we're transforming go-to-market. Like I do revenue operations as a service, right? We are Rev partners. We have taken, hey, you don't have to hire somebody. Think of like, you have to hire a RevOps staff over here. We have we have changed it where you can subscription your revenue operation services, and we pushed it over here. This is what companies are doing, right? They're this is we take all the burden, we hire the people, we train the people, and you can fire much easier. This is why RevOps, you can essentially SaaS subscription anything today. And that's where you see all the innovative business models that are happening across verticals, right? But it's all the same. Okay, I said last question. My business sells a SaaS product, online professional learning, but it also includes lots of professional services. Both services and online learning are paid up front. How does this fit into the model? It is fully paid up front. So this is B2B, and it sounds like that's B2C, but you may have businesses that are buying from you. In my mind, all that is depending on your go-to-market. For professional services, sits squarely on the left. And it depends on how you're paid and how long a contract is. So I run a professional services company, and we don't do any upfront. We only do subscription. So we're over here. So they pay monthly. If you have a class that you pay everything for at the very beginning, it's going to be over here. If it's B2C, this is why this model doesn't work for B2C. If it's B2C, you may actually just be over here because it's an hourly class, or it's a weekly class that you pay up front for, and it's just a collection mechanism that you're changing, right? So that's where I'd say how you're thinking about it. And so B2C doesn't work here because B2C, your win rate will be a lot lower in every model because you have 1,000 people coming to your website, only 10 of them convert. That is a 1% conversion ratio. That is not a 10%. Okay, I'm going to keep, there's so many questions. What about professional services that run contingency? So that is literally usage-based. Contingency services is literally usage-based because you're saying, and this is the point, and you'll see this. Actually, I'm going to use this as a transition. These business models change where you must focus your time. So let's look at this. I think this will be helpful as we think about RevOps. So we get this. So that if you change your business model, it changes where you focus your time. What do I mean? If you have an ownership model, your focus is on selling and closing deals. Ownership models, as remember, you have a high average contract value and a long selling time. And if you do not fit in there, even if you say pay up front, you're more likely on this side of the equation. And where do they focus all their time? And it actually makes sense. It is on closing deals, because once you buy you maybe a plant and you buy a manufacturing service, that's going to be there for 5 to 10 years. And so what you're selling then is maintenance. And your maintenance business may very well be on this side, right? But there's two different businesses. Yet you're selling the piece of equipment, and then you're selling your insurance which is a different business model where you're paying quarterly over here on the left, right side. But your focus is on closing and selling deals. The next is subscription. And this is why RevOps, this is what has happened. I said business is more complicated from class 1. This is what I mean. Business is more complicated. You can't just focus. You can't have the manacle, as what Embodied Design would say. You can't have the manacle focus on selling on the left end, because you don't make money on selling contracts. You make money on reoccurring impact on the right side of the bow tie. And so this is what you call bow tie funnel. And we'll go over this much more detail tomorrow. But on the right side, that's where you make money. And so you must focus on sales and CS. And because it's when the renewal occurs, it's when they're happy, it's after they're live do you start making money. And it's less about the number of customers and then how long you have kept the customers. And then as you go to consumption, it's all about, are they consuming that thing? It's actually, that's why it's called product-led growth. It's less about the sales function. That's why it's product-led growth is a common sales motion here. It's less about the sales motion, and it's much more about, you must drive an immense amount of volume of deals, and then how good your product is, and how well you do customer service. If you send t-shirts, if you send gift cards, if you send them smiley videos, whatever it is, your CS team is the driver of your revenue, not your sales team. And that is a big shift, and we don't think about it that way very often. Okay, I have some more questions as we go in here. I'll answer them. When you say win rate 1 to 3, 1 to 8, what stage does that start? That starts from we talk about sales ops. That starts from technically SQL, which we'll go over the data model tomorrow. SQL, which is sales qualified lead, to contract signed, which is commit. Meng, is the go-to-market motion the way you do sales, or is it marketing, or also part of CS? Wow, beautiful question. It's like a layup for tomorrow. Our go-to-market motion is the most overused terminology and confusing terminology in revenue operations discipline today, period. Go-to-market motions are different by function, sales, marketing, and CS. And we talk about alignment. That's where alignment occurs. We'll show you visually what this means. Is your sales and marketing and CS team all doing the same go-to-market motion to support your business model? It all fits. The answer is they're all different, and they have different structures, and and how you execute them is different. This is Christina. Our business model is very interesting. We have a third-party platform that offers deals on SaaS subscriptions. I am on sales ops, which our salespeople reach out to sales SaaS companies to get them to list our site. No upfront revenue is collected. Our sales reps profits are based on rev share model. After product goes live on our website, people are dying. What model would this be? Sounds like a innovative way to do that's a go-to-market. So that sounds like it's a subscription or consumption model, right? Where it's occurring on the right side. The product is driving all the revenue, sitting somewhere in between subscription and consumption. What you've changed is your sales go-to-market motion. So that's not a traditional sales go-to-market. Revenue sharing with sales teams post going live is not common. And so we'll go over that tomorrow. What are the 5 most common sales go-to-market motions? We'll talk about that. My VP says that tracking customer satisfaction is critical to ensuring sustainable sales. Do you agree? So when the VP is saying that, because this is one of these best practices things, and I'm assuming VP of sales or VP of something saying this, they are saying that the majority of our profit does not come from net new logos. It comes from retaining current customers. And the retention of the customer has compound impacts, which we'll go over tomorrow. And that is more important to our business than getting a net new logo. Thus, we should spin like that's important. That's what he's saying, or she's saying, and I 100% agree. And we'll talk about that in detail tomorrow. How does having a mixed business model impact the difficulty of finding the optimal RevOps model? The example, professional services that are consulting up front, but also have an option for managed service in the long run. I mean, this is our business model. So yes, it impacts difficulty because you must track the conversion from one-time onboarding into what we call cross-sell, from a non-reoccurring to reoccurring revenue. It does have additional complexity, and that's why revenue operations exist. So that professional services can turn into consumption subscription models, and anything that is moving towards, anytime that is moving towards subscription is multiplicatively or exponentially more difficult. However, it also has a higher potential to make profits. A HubSpot partner can sell subscriptions, retainers to manage their accounts. We've got both sides. Yes, agreed. What is considered a good or average revenue retention rate for an annual subscription model? We'll go over this, some metrics. We'll go over that in our data model because we're going to break down each one of the conversion metrics you should be tracking. And that specific conversion ratio, I'll show you. Like we'll go over that tomorrow or on day 3. Would you say that HubSpot's focus is consumption as the way you can increase recurring revenues by increasing private or current? HubSpot is not consumption, which is funny. They're consumption for marketing contacts, but they have monthly contracts. So if you see you're paid, they hit here, right? You have to. They're looking at how many marketing contacts you're using monthly. But if you have Sales Pro, Ops Hub, Service Hub, you're paying by seats. And so they're recalculating monthly. And then based on your contract, you're either going to charge annual, prorated, or quarterly. So they sit firmly within this annual and monthly firming. And that has, like, how they do revenue operations is that affects how they do that. Okay, I have been answering questions for a long time. I'm gonna finish here just to make sure we go over exercises, and I'll continue answering questions as we go. Gosh, these are great questions. I want to answer them. I'm going to finish this, then I'm going to answer it, and I'll do this. Okay, common trends. So what do we see happening in the business models over time? Number one, you are seeing perpetual or ownership models attempting to become subscription-based models. You see this in professional services. You see this, and you'll see large enterprises trying to take their service and turn it into subscription, because they're trying to read there's lots of competitors, and they're trying to change. Now, here's the issue, and here's common mistakes: is when you change your business when you change your business model, it requires a total new go-to-market motion, and a total new go-to-market motions for sales, marketing, and CS requires new structure and team structure and a new product. So just like you're essentially starting a new business, and that's just to be. And so each one of these all is saying that. You have existing software companies are attempting, and I actually have this wrong way, they're going from subscription and they're attempting to do multi-year. And you'll see this a lot because they need cash, especially now, is these software companies that have had explosive growth and they now have a brand name are trying to go up market to enterprise, and they're trying to get multi-year contracts because they need guaranteed cash so they can fund and become profitable. And so think about like this. Yeah, that's such a great, Frank, like the BMW, like perpetual subscription, like that is BMW charging for heated seats. Yes. Instead of paying the $1,000 or however much it costs to get a heated seat in my BMW, I'm just going to pay, I don't know how much it is, but $15 a month, and it's actually cheaper. And you're right. Like that, they're changing the way. They're just this is cash. So just think, perpetual is very profitable. Subscription has a larger target addressable market, and they are doing this to stay competitive and have better value propositions. Because as you remember, this creates a better value prop because the consumer no longer bears the burden. Subscription based is you have people moving, it's actually from subscription to multi-year because they need cash. That's why, yeah. And then you have consumption going to subscription. And this is because PLG is so difficult to do. The most difficult RevOps, shopped, and Revit to do and to get right is you must have a total frictionless sell process. So you'll see PLG moving from PLG, from this user seat to attempting to do monthly subscriptions, going the other way, because it's honestly, it's easier to charge, it's less friction, and they're attempting to get larger and larger deals. These are common trends that you see through these. So as you look at a summary, as we get to the end of class 2, a summary of these, I made a table, makes this easier to see. You have, let's go, perpetual ownership is large ACVs, low volume of deals, high win ratio, buyer has all the risk, and your go-to-market focus is your sales funnel. Subscription, you have multi-year to monthly contracts, smaller ACVs, medium volume, medium win ratio, 20%. Majority is still on the sellers. Like you now crossed where anytime you start having a subscription based, you're putting all the weight on the sellers. And you have both a go-to-market function on sales and CS, and that's the evolution of RevOps becoming more important and why it's becoming a word. And then consumption-based. And by the way, this change is where SaaS companies are like, oh my gosh, I have new people to sell and I have more problems to fix. Thus, they created a SaaS product, subscription product, or a PLG product to help people do this model. Consumption, as we talked about, pay as you go. AWS is a good example. Very, very low. I mean, it may be $15 a seat, right? Very, very $10 a seat, maybe even freemium like Slack. High volumes, low win ratios, all the risks on the seller. Go to market is almost all CS. Okay, so we're gonna get a practice. But before I do that, I'm gonna answer some questions. Does having consumption freemium based model mean that there should be more of an emphasis on data quality and accuracy as it relates to product usage in order to build automation flow? Yes, yes, yes. I would state it differently. It's a great question. It's impossible to do PLG well, or go to market motion. It's impossible to do a consumption model without a rigid, well-defined, well-executed data model. As you get from 1 million AAR to 10 million AAR, which is where RevOps like really wins, and especially as you scale up 100%. We work on a no success, no fee basis. The fees are a percentage of success value. So consumption model. Contracts are for an average period of 3 years, but average sales cycle is so variable, anywhere from 6 months to 18-month models. It's an RP, which seems contrary to the subscription model. I don't know the specific question. It sounds like you're saying, hey, my business model does not fit within what we're talking about. So what we have this like weird marriage, and I'm going to go here. You have this weird marriage. What I'm hearing is of, hey, I have these, they're very large contracts if we win them, but we only win them when we have them. So we sit in this weird state of both ownership, because it's this large chunk. However, we only win when we deliver well. What I'd say is understand the business model is you're still like the most important impact here. We think about this is you're going to have to focus on delivery. It's just as important of contract securing, and you don't actually get profitable until back here. And so I would say, and how you're paid, I would say that is almost like a subscription model with a interest, like a way you're getting success. So I just like as a point, when you shift from subscription focus model monthly to annual or multi, are you sacrificing CS for sales? It's interesting is the answer is no, but where you're putting money in initiatives, yes. So if you're going to get multi-year contracts, your sales process and how must be better than if you're doing lower subscription, but you're not sacrificing. It's just where are you putting your emphasis and where are you putting your, as a revenue operations department and putting your thought process, where are you attempting to create lift inside the business? In your focus and how you prioritize your time changes based on your business model. That's what we're saying. Okay, we are 11:52. There are more questions in here. I am going to go over our. We're not going to have time to do the practicum. We've almost talked them. So I'm going to talk through this so you hear it, and I'm going to go over our homework for today. So first is practicum. Imagine if your business was shifting from perpetual to subscription. How or what actions would you set up for the new sales motion in your CRM? So I'm going to talk this out loud so you hear. I'm going from perpetual or this ownership model to subscription. So thing number one, and I'm just going to, the most important portion, because if you think about focus is, and this is a relic of our ownership path, is you must, if you're moving from perpetual ownership to a, honestly, I think in HubSpot, I'll show you in the class on day 3, how to fix this, but you must start tracking customer lifecycle post contract. What do I mean by that? That means when we're traditionally, whatever CRM you're in, we're going to have almost all the left side sales funnel. We all have these like metrics, right? When this would be what we're talking about tomorrow in our data model is for us to be able to do subscription models, you must have post customer segmentation. And we'll show you how to do that and how to think through those. So, because there are more conversions that happen after someone signs the contract, because when they go live, when they onboard. So you're thinking about like the success getting retainer, like you have post contract, close won sales. You have other segmentation in your database that helps you conversion ratios past that. CS funnel stands for customer service funnel. Hold on. Okay. And we're going to skip this, but just know that when you do this, it affects your sales team and it affects your CS team.